Well, welcome back to the Social World podcast. I'm Dave Niven, and as always, it's a pleasure to have your company. As you know, one of the key themes that always I try and get guests to talk about is safeguarding. And who better today than my guest, who is Justin Humphreys. Now, Justin is the chief executive of an organization called 318. It's a Christian-based organization. Safeguarding specializes in safeguarding in all its different facets. So whether it's advising, whether it's training, whether it's lobbying, whether it's actually just supporting faith-based groups up and down the country, he's been at it a long time. And just as a little extra before I say hello to Justin, he's also just been honoured by a fellowship status with the Institute of Leadership. So all of that, and the man himself. Justin, welcome to the program.
Oh, thanks for having me back, Dave.
Okay, look, I had a quick go at introducing 318 in a very kind of edited style. I wonder, just for people listening, if you could just give us a little bit of a synopsis of what it is, what you do, and why you do it, maybe.
Yeah, sure. Well, 318, as you've already said, Dave, is a safeguarding charity, which is Christian in its focus. We've been around since 1977. We're supporting currently in excess of 10,000 organizations as members of one kind or another. And we are providing a range of different services and support to churches, other places of worship, charities, NGOs, community groups, commercial organizations, you name it, we've probably got some. And we do that through a range of different things. So we provide DBS checks, and we are the largest provider of DBS checks to the faith sector, according to the DBS, Disclosure and Barring Service. We provide training. So we provided, I think, over 12,000 delegate places on our training last year, providing training in all manner of different topic areas relating to safeguarding. We have a helpline, which is available to anyone to call to discuss any safeguarding issue or concern that they may have. Then we have our consultancy service, which really sort of deals with the heavier end of the work, complex cases, reviews, audits, risk assessments, investigations. And then we have our research, public policy and advocacy activities, which are all about connecting with government, other policymakers, sector bodies on issues relating to safeguarding and faith. So we've been doing that for quite some time now.
What do you do in the afternoons?
Lie down in a dark room.
But you also provide, taking up that last point about speaking to government, you provide a Secretariat for the All Party Parliamentary Group on safeguarding in faith communities, don't you?
Yes, that's right. So I was privileged to co-found that with Sarah Champion MP back in 2018. We'd been having conversations about a number of concerns that we were seeing across faith settings and communities relating to safeguarding practice. And Sarah was equally concerned about those issues. And I was saying at the time, look, it's really important that we're able to engage parliamentarians with these issues, increase understanding and engagement, hopefully begin to influence some of the policy making so that that understanding could be brought to bear on the policy changes. So that's where the APPG, the All Party Parliamentary Group, started. And we've been going ever since. It's really exciting work.
But how often do you meet?
Well, we try and meet 3 or 4 times each year. The challenge to that, obviously, is that we've got to navigate around parliamentary recess periods and those sorts of things. But that's what we try to do, and we try to ensure that we can engage the broadest representation of faiths in that process. so that we can really tussle with how things are on the ground for those who are working in faith communities and faith-based environments, and engage parliamentarians in some of the key discussions. So we're looking at a whole range of things at the moment, particularly the implementation of recommendations from ICSA.
Yeah, if you feel you've had success in whether it's an influence or actual practicality, I mean, does it feel like it's been worthwhile to actually set that up?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, Dave. I mean, it is hard work, and it takes quite a lot to keep it on the tracks. But it is absolutely worthwhile, because when you see that the engagement of the APPG starts to impact legislative change around things like positions of trust, and the incoming agenda around mandatory reporting, you really start to feel that it's a worthwhile exercise, and it's those things that sort of keep you going, really.
Okay. Well, you wanted to. I mean, 31 you do so many different things. That's the thing. It's where to start almost. But the one thing I want to actually make sure that people realize is that your charity, but it's a large organization, actually has tendrils, if you like, right through the country. And you're actually able to pick up, if you like, the temperature in some ways throughout the country about how things are. Do you feel that there's enough done centrally from all faiths in terms of actually informing, alerting, raising awareness, etc., to do with safeguarding? I mean, perhaps the numerically bigger faiths or the more established ones, but essentially you talk to all faiths, don't you?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, whilst we are a Christian organisation, we find ourselves increasingly working with, supporting people from all walks of life, all faiths, and none. So yeah, I mean, I think, to answer your question, I have to say that enough isn't being done. Now, that's not to say that there is not good progress being made in some quarters, great efforts being made, some excellent examples of best practice. But generally speaking, there is still a long way to go. And there's no level playing field when it comes to safeguarding in faith communities. I think that's the point to make here, that there is such a variation in awareness, quality of practice and response, that there's still quite a bit to do in some areas.
Well, look, I mean, I think, tell me if I'm wrong, okay, but I think it sounds a bit like you're kind of, if you like, in the same kind of bracket as I feel I am, because I remember when I was in practice and working life, and you always could, you see a way of doing something or something you think would really enhance the job, but just the resources aren't there. So, what you do is you make a very clear kind of available list of unmet need.
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of that goes on, not just in faith-based communities, but generally in the statutory sector, obviously as well. When it comes to safeguarding, there's an awful lot of change in terms of what the landscape is, and I know you're aware of it, but what would be your thinking on how much it's percolating into, like, the safeguarding work within faith communities? I'm thinking of things like human trafficking, human slavery, the whole supply chain issues about conditions of people making our clothes or making our food. And of course, the big one of all the evil stuff that's associated with the dark side of the internet. I mean, these are contemporary safeguarding issues of great volume. Do you pick up much activity to try and how to work with it, how to help people raise awareness or educate them, whatever?
Well, yeah, I think there's a few ways in which we would come into contact with that. I mentioned earlier our helpline. And we pick up a huge variety of concerns, questions, and issues through that. So faith settings wrestling with the realities of county lines, people trafficking, are things which we do pick up. And I think, as I perhaps alluded to already, there are some settings and communities which are more switched on to those realities than others. There's no question about that. And across the faith community, I think if we look at them and understand that they have been active in social impact endeavors for centuries, there are some great opportunities for those settings to engage with their communities and be a part of solutions to some of these issues. But equally, there are some huge gaps also. So I think what I'd say is that it's a very mixed bag in terms of those who genuinely understand those emerging issues and want to do something about it, and those who remain largely oblivious.
So if you had the time, and even with all your staff, you'd probably find it a long list of unmet need that you're seeing out in there. I mean, and that's not necessarily anything that we should put fault on people. It's just a need.
Yeah.
And hopefully people will realize before too much damage, any more damage is done than can be avoided, that there are plenty of ways to counter these practices.
Yeah, I think that's right. And one of the things that we're really keen to try and influence is better engagement between faith communities and local authorities, other statutory partners, and indeed government and their various agencies and departments, to encourage better working relationships between faith communities and all of those that I've just mentioned, because I think the opportunity that exists to engage with and wrestle with these issues in faith settings, I think, is incredible, and it's often forgotten. So whilst there's often a narrative that says faith setting churches or particular expressions of church are not as safe as we would want them to be, and there's been a catalogue of disasters and scandals and all sorts, there are also great opportunities. So I think trying to encourage that dialogue to say, look, we have a role to play, and we want to step up to that responsibly, is a key part of what we spend our time doing.
Pleased to hear it, because I totally agree with you. I think many faith settings, especially those that have teams working in safeguarding, don't necessarily always feel full partners with the equivalent in the statutory sector, or maybe even some charities, And I think to be more effective, and as a cost benefit, sharing and networking much more frequently, going to each other's kind of board meetings or whatever, or linking in with opposite numbers. The savings and things like data sharing, training, it can be considerable. I mean, as well as the bonus of actually, hopefully getting better informed.
Absolutely, and I know that you understand that completely, Dave, from the work that you do. But I think seizing the opportunities to work together and to lean in to some of these complex emerging issues is just critical. And they're often, it's not that there isn't an appetite. I think sometimes it's genuinely that people don't know who to speak to or where to go. But, one of the things that we will always say is, if you're in a given community doing something particular that may be engaging with vulnerable groups, let your local authority or your other safeguarding partners know that you're there and what you're doing, so that you're not faced with having to try and build relationship in a time of crisis, because of course that's never the best time to be building relationship.
I
You
think
know,
the team, sorry, I was going to say that the safeguarding teams that are employed by the church
mm,
are very clear. And I think it's a very, very simple way that I look upon it, is that they're not there to look for crime. Their job is to manage risk.
yes,
And, therefore they need a good partnership, because they will come across potentially criminal activity.
yeah, yeah,
And, it's not their frontline job, but it should be their frontline eyes and ears.
yeah.
Anyway, so look, I'm glad to hear what you're saying, because it really will take a bit of time. But I do think there are things that are moving faster now. For example, the response to working with situations of domestic violence
Mm,
seems to be becoming, well, certainly, I don't know about the numbers, but certainly looks like more improved in terms of awareness, and in terms of training, and in terms of key things to help look out for within the community.
yeah, I think that's right. But as I said, with in terms of the general picture and general landscape around safeguarding in faith communities, awareness to domestic abuse is without doubt increasing.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
just working with some organisations quite closely, as we do, so people like Restored, who are an organisation, a charity, who works specifically to raise awareness and improve practice in that area. That I think they would say that there is still an awfully long way to go. Whilst there are some that would be very much open, wanting to address the issues, do their very best to prevent it, respond well when it has happened, there are equally many who really just don't seem to be alive to it. So, it again, it's a mixed bag. Maybe that's phrase of the day.
Well, no, I mean, you're no, you're spot on. I mean, if people were kind enough to listen to a couple of podcasts about 3 ago, I did the first one with the Chief Constable of Avon and Somerset, who's got the national lead
Mm,
on it, Sarah Crew.
mm,
Then the week after, I did a podcast with the Police and Crime Commissioner.
yeah,
And it's fascinating because, and to her, I talked about slavery
yeah,
and the increasing numbers. And although in Avon and Somerset, which is what she's responsible for, it's the numbers needed rechecking, I think. So I think she's
right,
going to have to do that.
okay,
But whatever. But I mean, what I'm saying is that these are our neighbours,
yeah,
agencies. Every faith, has a neighbour and an agency. Whether it's a police force, and whether it's probation,
mm,
or whether it's social services.
mm,
Literally, they've got neighbours, and there's no reasonable neighbour that's going to turn down help from somebody that can help.
yeah, yeah.
So that's how I feel about it. Sorry, it's a bit of a rant there. Listen, tell us a little bit more. Come on, 31.8. So at the moment, what would you say your priorities were in terms of, because you gave us all the general things that you're responsible for, the checks and the
Mm.
training and the advisory stuff. But what projects that you can talk about have you got in the wind at the moment?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's always things being developed. One of our most recent that we are seeing an increased uptake in is the Safeguarding Standards Award that we launched last year. Now we've been operating with a set of 10 safeguarding standards for decades now. We improve them and so on as time goes on, but they've existed for a long period of time. So our Safeguarding Standards Award is based upon those standards and give organisations of all kinds, not necessarily just faith-based organisations, the opportunity to firstly assess themselves against those standards, which will cover all sorts of things from policy and procedure through to training, safer recruitment, working with offenders,
Yeah.
partnership working. They can assess themselves against those standards and then have us independently come and look and verify and explore those issues, and then hopefully at the end of that process give them the award that says we are attentive to these things. And it's incredible to see the effort that is put in by organisations of all sorts who are determined to demonstrate that they're genuinely committed to safer practice. And so that's one of a whole number of really exciting projects that we've got underway at the moment.
Great. I've got to say, and embarrassingly, because I do know a little bit about your world, I wasn't aware of it.
Yeah, well, maybe that's our fault. Maybe we haven't shouted loudly enough about
Okay.
it.
No. Well, fair enough. I'll tell you what. I'll talk about it afterwards. But listen, so really, essentially, that's a learning experience with a little bit of competition and a prize.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. That's great. No, but that's the way to do it. You actually kind of, you can, I can imagine people will be really interested to demonstrate, what they think is good practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the ability then to be able to show that to partners, to funders where that's appropriate, to those who may be wanting to contract with you, to be able to say, look, we have been independently, externally verified as being committed to creating a safer environment is a huge benefit to many. So, we want it to be a process where we're encouraging this continuous improvement and learning. So it's in no sense do we want to say, look, you failed here and you failed there and you failed in the other place, but saying actually let us help you to raise your game, to maintain standards for the benefit of all.
So the parent, I get it. I think I get it. Anyway, so the people that get the award at the end would be the ones that have the most positives rather than the fewest negatives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I think I got that right.
Yeah. It's a great way for organisations to show those who are interested that they're genuinely committed to safeguarding practice. So it's really encouraging to see.
Now, look, I mean, I kind of rather embarrassedly said I hadn't heard of it before, that particular award. But on a more general point, I do remember that many years ago we came across each other and it was all to do with 31.8 in the media.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get enough? Do you have, well, firstly, do you have the need, do you think? But if you do you get enough opportunity to let people hear you in all sorts of media, whether it's written or broadcast or social media, because you're building up experiences all the time that really could be shared quite a lot?
Well, look, I'm not going to sit here and say that that there aren't more opportunities that we could take advantage of in the media space. I think we're always open to speaking about the work that we do, the challenges that we see, the best practice that we come across. There's always going to be more opportunities for that. And I think whilst we are really quite well known, particularly with sort of the Christian faith-based media, we still probably don't have as much exposure to the mainstream media as we like. I mean, we do things occasionally with BBC and Sky News, and that's great when we can do that. But we'd always welcome those opportunities. So there's plenty to say, and I would like to think that most people would appreciate at least a degree of relevance to their settings and communities, even if it doesn't involve faith.
Yeah. What would you say that a lot of your, I mean, is your work sort of fairly evenly split, urban and rural?
I would say so. I mean, we don't analyze our engagement data particularly in that way, but we do analyze it in terms of the types of organizations and settings who are joining in membership with us, and particularly breaking it down in terms of, well, which denominations or networks or which sections of the church do they represent, where are they in the country. So what we can say is that we have a pretty good even coverage across, certainly across England, and increasingly in the other three nations of the UK.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that yes, it's a fairly decent spread across rural and urban.
Well, look, I mean, you've actually sort of virtually taken my next question out of my mouth. Which, well, this is great. A nice bit of continuity here. I was going to ask you about the four home nations. And are there distinct differences in the way you have to operate? Because I've come across situations with other organizations who had to either alter training because of the different legal systems and so forth, and the different kind of government kind of mandates and so on. But I mean, have you found it easy to sort of flow through the countries, or has there been some problems having to sort of translate things?
Have we found it easy? No.
No.
Have we encountered problems? Yes. But
I was trying to be gentle with you. That was...
yeah. I mean, what I would say is that we're committed to a four nations approach to our UK-based work, which means that we, rather than sort of replicating or duplicating what we do across the four nations, we try and ensure that we embed what is relevant to everything that we do, so that whichever of the four nations somebody coming to us for support is situated in, that they know that we are understanding of their context, their culture, their legislative frameworks. But as you know as well as I do, Dave, that we are seeing increasing divergence in terms of the legislative platforms that each of the nations are working from. There are some commonalities, but there are an increasing number of differences. So keeping on top of that is quite a tricky job, actually.
Yes. Well, welcome to the Pleasure Dome.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed there is. And I mean, on one hand, let's be generous and actually sort of reflect the fact that keeping their own identity is a good thing for any country.
Yeah.
And the four home countries, are very proud sort of nations.
Yeah.
But when it comes to generic safety, there's only so many ways that you can actually look at things differently. And I think, there's a consistency of training available. I've trained people in all four countries.
Yeah.
Apart the difficulty, of course, in Wales, there's the translation issue, serious, into Welsh and so forth, and the fact that there needed to be a Welsh speaker, saying it, because I didn't have Welsh to speak. So, there was that. But I can see that people like to hold on to that as an identity thing. And I think it's a pretty good community prop, a very good community support.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think there is much to be learned across the four nations. Some will be, in one particular area of concern, you might find that Scotland is further ahead of England, and in another, Northern Ireland further ahead than Wales. And I think there's a real beauty in that, whilst it does create some tensions and some challenges in making sure that we can cover all the different bases. The ability to be pulled forward by our friends in the other nations within the UK, I think is a really rich opportunity.
Yeah, I think we should leave the challenges to football.
Yeah, let's not go there.
But I mean, but okay, look, we're probably getting towards the last few minutes, and I don't want to miss anything. If there's anything you wanted to raise, I think I will say too that we're not avoiding the issues that have been nationally kind of challenged recently within the churches, and the fact that there's been a lot of activity, a lot of media coverage, and so forth. But I would hope to do some programs about that in the future. But this was scheduled really to build up a picture, if you like, of safeguarding in faith communities. And, that's why I'm delighted that Justin could come along. So, look, a couple of more minutes, Justin. If there are people are listening, let's start with the people in, the communities that you would serve. Any particular message that you would like to give them about the experiences you've had, the positives, about the responses you get? Because I do know that you're well thought of as a company.
The key thing that I'd like to say is that it would be great if faith settings and communities could be seen as partners in the safeguarding effort. That they could be engaged by partners in localities and by government, so that we can really demonstrate there is both an opportunity as well as a responsibility. We have to acknowledge that faith settings have not always done well. We haven't talked particularly about victim survivors and the response to them when they've been harmed in the context of faith settings. We should not forget that has been the reality for many, but that there are great efforts in place in many places to try and change that narrative going forward and to be seen as credible and genuine actors in this broader safeguarding endeavour. So, I think don't forget the faith settings. Engage us. Enable us to contribute, whilst at the same time being held account for the things that we do.
Good stuff, Justin. Thank you. Well, thank you very much indeed for today, and good luck with the future. Thanks again.
Thanks very much, Dave. It's been a pleasure again.